Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Zoom webinar, Active Involvement of People with Disabilities Create Better Solutions for All. My name is Erna Blöndal. I am the Director General. I am a Director General here at the Ministry of Social Affairs in Iceland and have the role of a moderator during this webinar today. And we are very happy to be with you here as this seminar is a part of the larger co-Nordic journey that we are now ready to begin. Our meeting here today is a milestone on the path towards achieving the United Nations Global Goals, Agenda 2030. It's also directly linked to the Nordic Council of Ministers Action Plan for Nordic Cooperation on Disability 2018-22, but Lars from the Nordic Welfare Center will provide us with more information on this later on. The Nordic Welfare Center has played a big role in organizing this seminar and has been entrusted with the task of establishing cooperation with the Nordic countries for seminars on subjects related to the Agenda 2030. Iceland has chosen to focus especially at the participation of people with disabilities and how their participation could contribute to the solution that benefits everyone. In Iceland, we have chosen to focus especially at the participation of people with disabilities and how their participation could contribute to solutions that benefit everyone. And we have been organizing the seminar in collaboration with the Icelandic Disability Alliance, the National Association of Intellectual Disabilities, and the City of Reykjavik. To ensure everything will work out as planned, in the technology department, we have the help of visualized Zoom. And we can be very happy with the interest and participation in this seminar today, that we bring together about 65 participants, both practitioners and researchers from all of the Nordic countries and all Baltic countries, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. We also have many great presenters from different countries that will provide us with the opportunity to get to know and discuss ideas and good examples of how it's possible to achieve and discuss the UN World Goals. Hopefully we will get a good feedback on the current implementation, which can point us to the right direction. If we can look at the program, we will have an exciting day ahead. The Minister of Social Affairs and Children here in Iceland, and then Lars Lindberg, the project leader from the Nordic Welfare Center, will provide us with a strong start and good introduction to our task ahead. Before we get 5 interesting and diverse presentations with a coffee break before lunch. After lunch, we have 3 more presentations before we go into 40 minutes of group work that will then sum up together in the end. The second part of this webinar is interactive, when you can share experiences and discuss everything you've heard during the day and answer some questions. And now there's nothing stopping us from starting this exciting seminar, webinar. And I would like to welcome the Icelandic Minister of Social Affairs and Children, Ásmund Einar Daðason.
With the adoption of the 2030 agenda, UN member state pledged to ensure no one will be left behind, meaning that all people everywhere, regardless of their individual circumstances or characteristics, must be included as active participants in the journey to 2030. It means going beyond averages, ensuring the inclusion of people who have previously been excluded, uncounted, left behind, or overlooked due to their vulnerabilities or stigmatization. Disability policy is precisely about building a sustainable society in which no one is excluded. The objective of the disability policy is the inclusion of people with disabilities in all aspects of society. The policy is increasingly characterized by a rights perspective, which has gained global expression through the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And even though the Nordic countries score high in international surveys on equality, political participation, and social sustainability, people with disabilities are often restricted from participation in public activities and political life. The Nordic region has indeed come a long way, but we can do much more to live up to our own ambitions for participation, democracy, and sustainable development. To achieve this, the exchange of experience and social inclusion of people with disabilities must be strengthened between the countries. The focus should be on good working models for municipalities and various government sectors, as well as early involvement of users. And that is precisely what we are planning to do here today. As a result of working meeting of representatives from authorities and interest groups for people with disabilities in July 2017, and as part of the Nordic Council Ministers' Action Plan for Nordic Cooperation on Disability 2018 to 2022, we meet here today altogether 65 participants from the Nordic countries and also from the Baltic countries, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. Today, we hope to contribute to an increased exchange of experience, knowledge, and good practice regarding active involvement of people with disabilities, strengthening the Nordic efforts to promote the implementation of Agenda 2030 of really leaving no one behind. I hope that today's debate will be enjoyable for all of us and give us the opportunity for us in increasing the participation, because it will create better solutions not only for disabled people but for everyone. I thank you for listening, and I wish you a very good webinar today.
Thank you very much, Ásmundur. It's one of my first webinars, so we experienced a little bit of technical difficulties, but we managed okay with second attempt. Thank you very much. And now I would like to ask Lars Lindberg, the project leader of the Nordic Welfare Center, to tell us a little bit about the background and information on this project by the Nordic Welfare Center.
My name is Lars Lindberg, and I work as a project leader for this project that arranged the conference together with Iceland. The project is named Universal Design, Participation and Democracy, and I will talk a little bit about the background. First, the Nordic Welfare Center is an institution under the Nordic Council of Ministers, and we have office in both Stockholm and Helsinki. And our task is to contribute to the development of welfare initiatives in the Nordic region. We contribute to the welfare initiative by being a knowledge-based organization, and with the development of initiatives by compiling and disseminating knowledge and welfare issues about the knowledge. We also enable expert meetings, convey knowledge, establish networks, and produce best practice and recommendations for decision making. We also build bridges between research and practice. So our targets is including politicians, decision making, NGOs, researchers. So we do it by arrange conferences and seminars with the topic of the Nordic region. We establish a comprehensive networks with experts and also participate and arrange different expert group meetings. So we disseminate our knowledge through different publications, our magazine, online publication, and newsletters. And we also coordinate and participate in different research projects about public health and social issues. Our results are based and used for the different political decisions at national, regional, and local level in the 5 Nordic countries, and also the Åland, Greenland, and Faroe Islands. We have 4 different focus areas: welfare policy, integration, public health, and disability issues. And disability issues, the focus is very much on the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the Council of Nordic Cooperation on Disability, and we also educate staff and personnel that work with deafblind persons. We also a secretariat for the Council on Nordic Cooperation on Disability, the Disability Council, which is the Nordic Council of Ministers consulting body on issues related to disabilities. The mission of the Disability Council is cross-sectoral, and the Council is also intended to support and monitor activities within the framework of the Nordic Council of Ministers Action Plan for the Nordic Cooperation on Disability, which lasted between 2018 to 2022. The action plan is divided in 4 focus areas: human rights, sustainable development, and freedom of movement. And this project is a part of the focus area, sustainable development. When we talk about Agenda 2030, we also talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 intellect goals, so designed to achieve a better and sustainable future for all. The agenda promotes social, economic, and ecological sustainability in a world where no one is included. The 17 goals are broad and independent, and each of the goals has a list of targets which are measured with indicators. There are 5 goals with disability on this person with disabilities or disability are mentioned in 11 times in the agenda. And the disability perspective is mentioned in a way that it should be needed to improve accessibility and living conditions for people with disabilities. In the man's perspective, leave no one behind. So we, in this project, this conference or the dialogue meeting is a part of, the purpose is to promote the exchange of experience and knowledge on the basis of the 5 Agenda 2030 targets. And it will be done by set up a dialogue meetings. Knowledge and good example should be collected of how the Agenda 2030 can be implemented and how different formats that we can find for the Nordic collaboration that support implementation. Each of the meetings is linked to specific goals and targets in the agenda. So this is the part that also that is to both map indicators and map different good examples. This is the second meeting. The first one we arranged in Helsinki in January. But due to the corona pandemic, we have to postpone all the meetings and arrange them as webinars in just from September. And this is the first one. The other 3 are, arranged. The first one is opportunity and barrier for people with disability living in a digital society. It's arranged by the National Authority Socialstyrelsen in Denmark, October 5th. Marty Cities are universally designed cities, October 27th, and is arranged by Norway, the authority Bufdir. And the last one is why are there so many politicians with disabilities, why so few politicians with disabilities in the Nordic countries? Example arranged by the authority Myndigheten för delaktighet in Sweden on November 17th. And all of them will be recorded and also afterwards. So that's thank you for me, and you will get more information and contact information afterwards. Thank you.
Now we will go into more speakers. I'd like to quickly mention that the program today is packed with interesting presentations, so the presenters will need to keep within the given time limits. I will be monitoring the time and warning the speaker when there are 2 minutes left. But now I'd like to welcome Rannveig Traustadóttir, a professor here at the University of Iceland, who's going to tell us about active involvement in a Nordic context.
Good morning, everyone. Now I need to figure out how to share my slides. Are we okay with the slides now?
Yes.
All right. So I want to start by thanking the organizers for inviting me to be a part of the seminar. What I was asked to talk about was active involvement in a Nordic context. So what I will do is I will talk a little about, so where does this call for active involvement come from? Everything has its history and context, and I'm going to trace some of it in my presentation in the beginning. And then I will turn to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the CRPD, and look at the requirements for listed there for actively involving disabled people in implementing and monitoring the convention. Then I will spend quite a bit of time on discussing ways in which disabled people can be actively involved and some very important crucial factors that can ensure this involvement is meaningful and effective. And then I have some concluding remarks at the end. So where does this idea of active involvement come from? The international context is that this really has its roots in the 1960s and 70s, where a lot of social movements of powerless and marginalized and oppressed groups rose up and demanded full human rights and equality. And these were the women's movement, various ethnic groups, gay and lesbians or LGBTQ groups. And last on this list of social movement was disabled people. And this demand was set forth through activism and advocacy. People took to the streets and advocated for change and for them to be fully recognized as full citizens with equal rights. Academic research and knowledge production has provided us with better understanding and insights into what the lives of marginalized groups are like. And then law and policy change has been really important. And these groups, of course, wanted to change law and policies that, for example, criminalized their existence or their characteristics, or saw them as sick or dangerous or whatever. And then this has been also asked to be put into practices and services for these diverse groups. And sadly, as we look around the world today, these movements are still very active and still revealing how they are discriminated against and violated in many ways. If we just look at the Me Too movement of women, Black Lives Matters movement in the US, so this struggle is really still active, and in all of these areas of activism, I mean, we see people taking to the streets every day. So, but this is where this started. And so if we look in the more in the Nordic countries, then the current Nordic welfare services for disabled people are rooted in laws that are based on the ideology of normalization and integration. Before that, you know, people were just, we had the policy of segregating people in large segregated institutions. But normalization was a new ideology, and in the 70s, most of the Nordic countries put in place new laws, and the current services are basically built on those laws. And the normalization era, as I see it, was started to end about the time when the convention came into being in the first decade of this new century. So involvement was in the beginning in the Nordic countries called basically integration, community integration. And then we have used new words like inclusion. And now for this webinar, the word involvement has been used. And this has changed. In the beginning, when we started closing the institutions, we talked about the institutionalization and community integration, first focusing on placement in the community. Then we moved on to thinking about, okay, it's not just placing people in the community. It has to do with interactions and connections between people. And then a lot of effort was also on school integration, first segregated schools in the community or in the and later inclusion in regular schools. And during the normalization era, disabled people had limited involvement in their sort of everyday decision making about their lives, for example, within the services. So if we also look more closely at, so what has this active involvement of disabled people been in the Nordic countries, then in the normalization era, there was an era of collaboration between the disabled people's organizations, or the DPOs, and the governments about improving disabled people's lives and services. And so our services today were in many places collaboratively put in place. But lately we have had growing tensions and conflicts between the DPOs and disabled people. And disabled people are more and more taking to the courts and trying to secure their rights to various services or ways in courts. So, and this is among other things, because disabled people complain about that their involvement has been tokenistic. They only come to the table late and they're not invited in the beginning. And so it's this sort of ticking the box thing. And also disabled people complain about paternalistic welfare services, that there is a great deal of resistance to change in traditional service systems, and that the great problem is the power imbalance between us and them. That mentality that it's us who run the system, or us who are disabled, and then them, the disabled people, and or them, the service providers. So we experience quite a bit of conflict today. That's more than was earlier on. And among others, the CRPD addresses this with clear requirements about the active involvement of disabled people in all of the issues that influence their lives, based on a new understanding of disability and this human rights approach that the minister also referred to in his opening address. So when I was preparing this presentation, I got a new book. So I'm throwing it up here just as an example of that, the international context of this active involvement. This is a Routledge Handbook of Service User Involvement in Human Service Research and Education. So please note, it's on human service research and education, that disabled people should take part in the research and the education of those who are involved in human services. So I list here a few of the issues that they list in the introduction that they think are critical, and that user involvement is at the heart of being able to change the traditional services. So this publication uses the concept of users and human services, and it is focusing that way. So rejecting the paternalistic traditional services, creating more equal roles within human services, the empowerment of service users, and breaking down assumptions and co-produce new personal relationship policies and practices. So it's quite an interesting book that I thought was very sort of telling for where we are now. And also internationally, the disabled people's organizations, they have this slogan, "Nothing about us without us," which is really a sign of the times, and has actually was coined many decades ago, but is still really relevant and still used by the disabled people's movement. And the CRPD echoes this demand, so that you could say that really that this slogan has been written into the CRPD. And I also want to remind us all that the CRPD is, for all the Nordic countries, a legally binding document to implement, because all the countries have ratified it. So, so let's look at the CRPD and what it says. What is one of the things that is unique about the CRPD is that it has written into it the first human rights treaty, a particular way of organizing and make sure that it is implemented properly. So Article 33 identifies 3 mechanisms that are relevant for implementing and monitoring. The first one is that states and state parties is a language that's used in human rights treaties. That means the countries that have ratified the treaty and are therefore bound to implement it. So the first requirement is that states have to designate 1 or 2 more focal points within their governments for matters relating to implementing the convention. States are also asked to give a due consideration, as they call it, to establish a coordinating mechanisms within governments to facilitate actions across different sectors and at different levels. These can be the same entity, so, but in larger countries, many of them have 2. So, and also states are obligated to establish or designate a framework that includes 1 or more that is called independent mechanism in the convention, but it really means a full-fledged national human rights institute. And sadly, Iceland doesn't have one. So Iceland needs to, you know, do something about that. So these are 3 ways, sort of, you know, organizational ways to help countries implement the treaty. And I must say that in the context we are talking about, it is really important that disabled people are effectively and actively involved in all of these 3 mechanisms, and in different ways. As individual consultants, for example, ministries and local governments often hire consultants to help them in specific areas. And I think it's important that disabled people are hired as consultants. Also as representatives of their disabled organizations. And then it's really essential that those representatives represent the full range of impairments, and also include women, men, girls, and boys, different ethnic groups, age groups, socioeconomic groups, etc. So that it's representative of the range of disabled people. I also think that it's crucial to employ disabled specialists to work on policies and practices at the national and local levels and within services. And within the monitoring system of the human rights for all disabled people, I think disabled people must be hired to work on that. And they must be cross-society, cross-disability, and include poor, homeless, and institutionalized people, or people who are in segregated or specially organized services. So I think it's important not just to think about, okay, we ask one person from, or two from the EPOs to come and talk to us. It has to be much more comprehensive so that we go beyond this us and them, so that disabled people are a part of the implementation, really integrated part, but not just sort of add-ons when, you know, we think they're needed. I also want to remind us that disabled people had a really key central role in formulating and drafting the CRPD, and the convention recognizes that this must continue. And so that in the CRPD, there are two key articles within the convention. Article 4, paragraph 3, that requires state parties or countries to closely consult with and actively involve disabled people in the decision-making process. Not just when the decision has been made to ask them, do you think this is okay? But in the whole process. And in Article 33, the convention also require that civil society, in particular disabled persons with disabilities and their representative organizations, that they shall be involved and participate fully in the monitoring process. And I also want to bring your attention to the fact that the CRPD committee that oversees the implementation of the convention worldwide issues general comments that include how to interpret and understand the requirements of diverse articles. And there is a general comment, number 7, that was published in 2018 that addresses these articles that I mentioned above, Article 4.3 and Article 33.3. And they have really extensive guidelines on what qualifies as disabled people's organizations and how should they be involved. And they highlight the central role of all disabled people to be included in a meaningful way in order to be able to implement the CRPD properly. So this is a really important general comment for everyone to look at, both and work by. And these general comments have a very high level authority because it comes directly from the UN committee. So it's very instructive what is in these comments. Okay, so yeah, so how will we do this? Making sure that disabled people are actively involved in creating the best solutions that we can come up with. And I think two areas are really, really important to focus on. One of them is that we need to strengthen the mechanisms within national and local governments. They also need to have more resources, for example, funding. And we also, there is a great deal of need for more knowledge about disability issues and accessibility within local and national governments. And there is a need for more knowledge about human rights, people need to be better informed about the CRPD and what it requires. Most people have heard about the CRPD, and I see, I can see that some more in-depth knowledge of the CRPD is lacking. So I think that's really important for these national and local entities. And then it's equally important to build the capacity of disabled people and their representative organizations, because the disabled people also need to have a good understanding of human rights principles. They also need to know the CRPD requirements and so on. And this capacity building must be accessible to all persons with disabilities. And actually, the general comment number 7 also addresses this and urges us to do this. Other issues that are really important to ensure that all disabled people can be actively involved is inclusive education. And education is important for all of us, but especially for disabled individuals. And they must have access to high quality inclusive education at all levels. And also we need to think about diversity. Implementing and monitoring the CRPD must recognize the great diversity within the population of disabled people. And some also to recognize that some disabled people need support to be able to be effectively active in implementing consultation and monitoring and making decisions around the CRPD. Other critical issues are funding. The national and local governments, they have to provide funding for disabled people and their organization so that they can strengthen their knowledge base and self-determination to become empowered, to be able to be more effectively and actively involved, and both in consultation, decision-making around this implementation. And we need to think, as I said earlier, we need to think more in partnership. That's just really crucial, I think. We need to get beyond this us and them mentality we are, to my view, too stuck in. So national and local governments have to work in equal partnership with disabled people and listen to their expertise. And it's often referred to that knowledge and experience by expertise by experience is really an important part of to implement the CRPD. And also everyone involved in implementing the CRPD must recognize the social relational understanding of disability as it is reflected in the convention. Okay, we also need to think about all disabled people, how they can be actively involved. We need to think about the rural areas. Often people who live in rural areas have less access and to be involved. So it's really important to make sure they're included. We also, like I have mentioned before, we need to think about having jobs for disabled people within the official decision-making bodies. They should be employed there in ministries, local governments, in services that oversee and make decisions about disability issues, and not just be viewed as consultants that are called in once in a while. And then it's the issue of policy and practice. Law and policy is really crucial and very important. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. A lot of countries have really progressive policies, and these policies fall apart at the implementation stage. That is really a theme that we see across countries. So we need to make sure that our laws and policies are implemented in practice. It's very complex to implement and monitor the CRPD. It requires multi-level governance. So we have an international level of the UN. We have in our part of the world, we have a European level, the Council of Europe and the European Union. And the European Union has actually ratified the convention, so it must implement it within its area of operation. Then we have national level to implement the convention, and local levels in the which are the municipalities in our Nordic countries, where the vast majority of responsibility for disability services and are located. So that's a key area of implementation for our region of the world. And then at the service level and everyday life level and practices. So this is pretty complicated, and we need to think not just on policies, we need to think practice. And it is my sincere belief and that this, if we are going to implement the CRPD properly, disabled people have to be effectively and actively engaged at all of these levels. And that, yeah. Okay, so I'm coming to my concluding remarks. So I want to start by, I will talk about opportunities at this time and obstacles to active involvement of disabled people in creating a better society for all of us. So the obstacles, I think, are pretty significant. We do have backlash in human rights internationally. You know, just listen to the news. I mean, it's just really scary, I must say, on a personal level to see what's happening, how human rights are easily violated and how countries can get away with, you know, violating.
Tamir, you have 2 minutes left.
Okay, we also see cuts in welfare provisions, including disability services, also with the COVID, that's a problem. There is a great deal of resistance to change within the current system. And also being number one is the biggest obstacle, said one disabled leaders in the disability movement, because the Nordic countries are the best, then it's difficult to criticize that what's missing. So, and the culture of welfare is very much focused on paternalistic services that want to make sure that people are safe, so they, you know, make decisions on behalf of people with disabilities with the best of intentions often, but that is not in accordance with the CRPD. And so I think that introducing new and innovative policies and practices are problematic if the basic underlying ideologies, which is like the normalization and the system based on that, are not compatible with proposed innovations that are based on the human rights model of disability in the CRPD. So I think we really need to look at that. So finishing on a more positive note with the opportunities, I think the CRPD brings extremely important opportunities for all of us for change on very many levels, and brings the promise of human rights for all disabled people and calls for this active involvement that we are focusing on today. Also, Agenda 2030 that the Minister and Lars also mentioned for implementing the Sustainable Development Goals worldwide is really important, and it is supposed to bring fundamental change for all people and on our planet. And you know, those two internationally agreed on documents are really important. And when they're used together, I think it's important strength for implementing full human rights for disabled people and include them in this implementation. I think that strong leadership at Nordic and national levels, both within governments and DPOs, are really important, and also within the services. We have a lot of strong leaders that have goodwill and vision and want to implement this properly, and we do need good leaders. Good leaders are really important, as we can see if we look around the world today. And we also need will and vision for co-production of new attitudes, relationships, and policies and practices from our politicians and from our leaders. So I think that's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rannveig. And it's we're gone a little over time, so we can't have any questions, even though many probably do have. And I would like to. I
actually think I did not go over the time. I started later, so I stuck within my 30 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Rannveig. But I would like to remind you, like Nina did, that you have the opportunity to ask questions in the chat. If you go to the chat symbol, you can see the chat in the Zoom app, and then you can ask questions for the lectures. Thank you very much, Rannveig. We will dive right into the continuation of the program. So I'd like to welcome Þuríður Harpa Sigurðardóttir, the chairperson of the Icelandic Disability Alliance, and Bryndís Snæbjörnsdóttir, the chairperson of the National Association of Intellectual Disabilities. And they're going to tell us about user participation and dialogue with the government. What's the vision of the disability interests organizations? Welcome.
Thank you, Erna. My name is Bryndís, and I'm gonna start this conversation. The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities contains express provision on the obligations of governments to consult with persons with disabilities and their organizations, including Article 4.3, which provides in the development and implementation of legislation and policies to implement the present convention, and in other decision-making processes concerning issues relating to persons with disabilities, state parties shall closely consult with and actively involve persons with disabilities, including children with disabilities, through their representative organizations. Article 33 provides that the obligation to consult also extends to monitor of the implementation of the convention. It reads, civil society, in particular persons with disabilities and their representative organization, shall be involved in and participate fully in the monitoring process. The Icelandic Act on Service to Disabled Persons with Long-Term Support Needs provides that in the implementation of the Act, the international obligation that the Icelandic government has taken on shall be observed, in particular the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The government is also required to ensure that persons with disabilities, including their interest organization, influence policy and decision-making concerning their issues. Decision-making shall be based on appropriate adoptions in areas where action is needed so that persons with disability can exercise their rights. In the case of children with disabilities and their families, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child shall also be observed in accordance with the law. The Icelandic Act on Municipal Social Services contains equivalent provisions. The Act on Service to Disabled Persons with Long-Term Support Needs also includes a special provision on consultation, providing as follows. Article 36, Consultation Committee for Issues of the Disabled. The Minister shall appoint a consultant committee for issues of disabled, which shall serve as a forum for consultation between the state, municipalities, and the interested parties. The consultation committee hall be composed of 2 representatives of the ministry, the social ministry, 1 representative of the Ministry of Finance, 2 representatives of the municipalities, and 4 representatives of the interest organizations for persons with disabilities. The ministry shall ensure that persons with disabilities make up a majority of all the committee. The function of the consultation committee is to advise the minister on policy making on issue concerning persons with disabilities. The Act of Social Services also includes clauses expressly providing for consultation with persons with disabilities and their representative organization, including a provision stating that participants shall be provided with support and training so that they can be active participants in user consultation. The implementation of this act shall take into account the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This must be taken to mean that the above-cited consultation obligation set forth in the Convention should be observed. It is clear from this that the obligation to consult is expressly provided for both in Icelandic law and the international obligations that Iceland has taken on.
You need to unmute, Harpa. We can't hear you.
Okay, sorry, I thought I had unmute. Thank you. My name is Þuríður Harpa, and I will continue as Bryndís left. The CRPD was ratified in Iceland at the end of 2016. And in the autumn of 2018, the new legislation on issues concerning the disabled entered into force. This legislation was drafted in close cooperation with persons with disabilities. Furthermore, in 2010, work began on implementing user-controlled personal assistance. There was considerable consultation in that effort with people with disabilities closely involved in discussion on consultation on how the legislation on user-controlled personal assistance would best serve the disabled. Subsequently, the Act on Issues Concerning Persons with Disabilities had to be updated so that it complied with and took into account the CRPD. This consultation effort began because people with disabilities wish to protect and affirm their right to participate in society on an equal basis with others. And user-controlled personal assistance is essential for many persons with disabilities and their families. This consultation was a learning process both for the government and for the disability organizations. And great deal was achieved during the final stretch before the enactment of the legislation, with consultation groups being tasked with reviewing laws and regulations and coordinating them. Those of us in the organizations for disabled were pleased with the outcome, with both the legislations as well as updated existing laws and regulations on issues concerning disabled people entering into force in October 2018. In the winter of 2018 to 2019, the government held consultation meetings between the government and the various interest organizations to consider a comprehensive review of the social security system. In short, this work was good, but the report that came out of it was not endorsed by the disability organizations, as the changes to the social security system were to involve the introduction of a work capacity assessment. Still, this report is quite useful. The disability organizations are open to the possibility of making gradual changes to the system without introducing a work capacity assessment. And I know that the report will help in that regard. This reluctance of the disability organizations may have played a role in the government's decisions to set up a different means of consultation, namely a so-called consultations forum, which is intended to serve as a platform for considering various issues concerning the disabled, but without any real dialogue and consultation taking place with persons with disabilities. The consultation forum merely gives persons with disabilities and their organizations an opportunity to express their views on a given issue, whether it be draft legislation for something else, and the time frame is often quite short. We miss being consulted from the early stages of an issue, instead of government officials being tasked with drafting legislations. To give an example, without any real consultation with those of us who are affected by such legislation. Frequently, we are presented with something in a meeting which has already been largely decided and asked to consent to it, on the presumption that this fulfills the government's obligations to consult. This is inadequate in our view. Consultation on issues concerning the disabled should begin right from the outset, instead of those of us who possess the relevant expertise only being called to the table when, for instance, a bill has already been drafted. Bryndís.
Thank you, Þuríður. I agree on everything you said. And as I explained earlier, the obligation to consult is very clear in Icelandic law. The problem is that the government does not seem to be well enough informed about their consultation obligation and what it entails. For instance, it is not acceptable for individual ministers or their ministries to handpick people for consultation, handpick disabled people for consultation. Instead, they need to go through the disability organization and ask for their nomination. But of course, they can also appoint their own representatives for consultation groups or committees, including people with disabilities. The obligation to consult also includes the responsibility to ensure that people with disabilities who participate in the consultation are given appropriate support and training to ensure that the consultation is genuine and not just for show. It should be borne in mind that consultation with people with disabilities and their organizations is different from consultation with, for instance, stakeholders in the labor market, as disability organizations do not have sufficient fundings to themselves to provide the necessary support and training to ensure genuine consultation. For example, for persons with intellectual disabilities and related disabilities. It is important that the government makes every effort to ensure that those disabled persons who need it are given appropriate support to be active participants in genuine consultation. For instance, by paying for the assistance that the person may need. Consultation whereby disabled persons are brought to the table without receiving adequate support is consultation in name only. The obligation of governments to consult with persons with disabilities is expressly laid out and explained in the general comment on the CRPD. However, it appears that the governments are frequently not very familiar with these guidelines, and generally there seems to be little interest in correcting this and educating the relevant staff about these guidelines to ensure that the consultation delivers the intended results.
Thank you, Bryndís. In order for persons with disabilities to be able to exercise their right to participate, e.g. in the field of politics, where their voices need to be heard, they must be provided with reasonable accommodation. The first step should be for all government ministries to employ experts, preferable people with disabilities who would provide advice and organize consulting meetings between people with and without disabilities. We would provide advice and organize, who would provide advice and organize consultation meetings between people with and without disabilities. They would have the job to ensuring that those who require special assistance due to their disability receive it. In this way, the ministry would be able to make sure that the consultation is genuine and productive. If disabled persons who serve on consultation committees are unable to follow the proceedings at committee meetings due to a lack of appropriate support and adaptations, there is no actual consultation. I would encourage the government to take the step of hiring experts at all ministries who would have the job of ensuring that the government fulfill its obligation to consult with disabled. In doing so, the government would promote increased awareness among its staff and contribute to a change in people's attitudes toward the disabled, and it would help to eliminate prejudice. I am sure that Bryndís can name some examples of consultation in name only that persons with disabilities were unable to fully participate in.
Yes, I'm very familiar with this problem with respect to persons with intellectual disabilities. It is far too common for them not to be consulted, and when they are not given enough support to allow them to actively participate, so that the consultation becomes unproductive.
2 minutes left.
Við höfum svo mikið eftir. For instance, at Þroskahjálp, we have one representative in the ministry consultation group on issues concerning the disabled. This representative has found it difficult to participate due to insufficient support. She has a day job and therefore finds it difficult to attend meetings at the scheduled times, and no compensation is paid for participation in the consultation group. The ministry has not provided her with the kind of support that would allow her to prepare for and participate in the meeting, and so we at Þroskahjálp have tried to give her the support she needs. We do not receive any special funding from the government to provide this support. We have a small staff and often barely are able to complete our own preparations for consultation. However, if the government were to provide us with acceptable fundings to perform this function, namely to provide needed support to people with disabilities so that they can actively participate in genuine consultation, we would be more than happy to fulfill it. The most important thing is to have real genuine consultation and not just consultation in name only. At Þroskahjálp, our focus in recent years has increasingly been on having fruitful and productive consultation with persons with all kinds of intellectual disabilities and also with children with disabilities, so that we can better fulfill our role as an advocate for this group. However, it would be preferable if they had better opportunities to be their own advocates, but this will only be possible with increased governmental funding. It is hopeless to fund the necessary support for genuine consultation by relying solely on the goodwill of the public, by buying calendars or making direct donation. But this is the situation we find ourselves in today.
Thank you. The time is up. Do you want to say one sentence, Þuríður, in the end, or?
Yeah, I would like to.
Very quickly.
I agreed with everything that Bryndís has said here. In order for all of the efforts of the disability organization and the government to have any results, the government must follow through. Today, we are dealing with COVID, a coronavirus, and a pandemic that calls for a new way of thinking and a new approach. Those of us with disabilities are pleased to see that remote meetings have now become a viable tool for organizations' work. Remote meetings can make it easier for people with disabilities to participate and have shown that so much can be accomplished through a computer. It is in the common interest of people with and without disabilities to ensure appropriate adaptations that benefit everyone, thus creating a better society for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Þuríður and Bryndís. And we'll go to the next speaker, which is Siv Holst, Vice Chairperson of the Disabled People's Organization in Denmark. She's going to tell us about the Danish example of user participation. Welcome.
Thank you very much. As I was introduced, my name is Sif Horst. I'm the Vice Chair of the Danish Disability Organizations. I'm also a member of the Nordic Disability Council. And today I just submitted my biographical data as the Danish government's candidate for the UNCRPD committee. So I'm very excited about that also. So I'm here about to tell a bit about the Danish example of user participations. Let me see if I can. Yeah. As it was also said earlier, nothing about us without us. That's really a good way to start. We also have in the Convention on Rights of Persons with Disability that persons with disabilities should have the opportunity to be actively involved in decision-making processes about policies and programs, including those directly concerning them. That does not mean that we should just focus on, for example, those matter related directly to persons with disability. For example, the disability toilet and the way directions to the disability toilet. The other picture I have on my screen today in this slide is an example from Copenhagen. It was an example of an exchange between a user and the Copenhagen architect for the Copenhagen city. We have some benches, also called Copenhagen benches, which are quite good. We have the trash cans, which are very good also in these COVID-19 situations where people have face masks and they need to leave them in a trash can. The problem in this case, which the architect had never thought about until a user mentioned it, is that when you place a trash can in each end of a bench, a person with a wheelchair, such as myself, has nowhere to sit. If we come together with a spouse, a friend, or somewhere else, we cannot sit in the middle of the path, blocking the road for everyone. We often sit next to the bench, but when you place a trash can there, there's no place for us to sit. So again, user participation at all levels, even when you don't really think of there's a reason of involving persons with disability in that level. In Copenhagen, we have rules stating that there should be a disability council in every municipality in Denmark. The Disability Council consists of members from the Disability Umbrella Organization and also of local politicians. They advise the municipal council or the city council on disability policy issues, and they create a dialogue between citizens and politicians in the public debate and local political issues affecting people with disabilities. And they are consulted in all initiatives and matters that are important for citizens with disabilities. Of course, there are differences in how the different disability council work. Some are really strong, some are very well involved. And we can see that in those municipalities where the disability councils are a part of the whole system, not just someone you want to have an official meeting with once in a quarter, but that you really involved every time and all the time, that you have meetings with the different departments of the municipalities. There you get the really strong system of making sure that you have this user participation, and making sure that whenever the city have a new policy, build something new, have to change something, that you make sure that persons with disabilities are thought in from the beginning and not as an afterthought where you might have to change some things. In the transport sector, we also have a rather strong system of user participation. I myself sit in the Danish Aviation Disability Council, and the work there for the last many years has meant that we have rather few complaints in Denmark about a person not being able to transport by plane or having issues when they transport. It means that we all the time have really good dialogue. It means that, for example, when I hear from someone, they write to me and saying, well, you know, I had this issue last time I was going through Copenhagen Airport, for example, and I can bring it up and we can discuss it, and we can all the time make these small adjustments. It's not perfect, but it's really making a difference. And we can see that in the number of complaints if you compare with other European countries. With the transport companies, we also have a lot of different ways of user involvement. So it could both be accessibility to buses and to the independent disability traffic, the way where you can be bussed independently if you, for example, in a wheelchair. We are just these years building metro and light rail. And again, we can really see the difference if you have the strong user involvement. For example, they built the light rail very early on in Aarhus, and they did not involve the users very well. And it means there are some issues now. On the other hand, I just heard from Copenhagen that even before the light rail system were even built, they had some users out testing the trains, you know, where should the buttons sit, where you need, if you need assistance, you can press these buttons, you know, which is the best position, what signage should you have to make it clear that the use of these buttons. So it's really important, again, that you have this discussion, you talk to the users before you finalize the different trains and the buses and things like that, where it's still cheap to change, because when the trains are there, it's very expensive often to make the changes. On our national train service, we also have a disability council, and they discuss also accessibility to the trains and on the train station. We do have a lot of old train stations in Denmark, which are not very accessible. But again, together with Disability Council, you have a continuous discussion, what can be done, small things, and what should be prioritized in which, when in regards to making the big changes, which are also needed. In public housing, we have a law in Denmark saying that every public housing should elect a board where at least half of the board members are resident of that housing. That goes for everyone, both persons with disability, elderly, but also just ordinary citizens living in public houses. But some places, they go further. So I have an example with me today of community housing called Satelliten, which is a home for adults with mental difficulties. And there they are, besides having this official board, they make sure that the resident is given the opportunity to experience self-responsibility and integrity, independence and autonomy through involvement. That the starting point is the individual resident's current situation, the needs and resources that everyone is given the opportunity to influence. And to make sure there's a clarity about which areas and in which way the resident has influence, also to avoid frustrations. But it's really working, and it also makes those living there, it's a way of increasing their independence and autonomy, both inside the houses, but also further on when they leave the houses later on. In the health area, we also have a lot of focus on user participation. When I was younger, I participated myself in a youth panel at our national hospital, Rigshospitalet, which was a great way of, you know, if youth have to be hospitalized, you know, what should be thought about? How do we feel the youth that they are at home in a hospital where there are often a lot of elderly and maybe they are not feeling at home at all. In Denmark, as I guess in all the rest of your countries, we have more focus on patient-reported data, which is also a really useful way of not having the goals necessarily that the doctors want, but also making sure that the patients are there to also choose what are my goals for this operation, for this treatment, what do I want out of it, what should I work on? So you can have the right support along the way. We have an institution in Denmark called VIBIS, which is the Knowledge Center for User Involvement in the Health Sector. And they gather and assess and disseminate knowledge and experience about involvement of patients and next of kin, which is also really useful throughout the way. An example for myself also that besides this more more maybe the health-related way of looking at things. You also have the accessibility of the hospital themselves. So on the photos on the right side, you have the entrance at one of the hospital, Køge Hospital. You might notice there's a bump on the ground, which is actually rather sharp and would be difficult to pass with a wheelchair. And the problem is that this is actually the wheelchair entrance, the disability entrance. So again, they forgot to have the user involvement. Whereas in the other picture in the far right corner is a project which I was involved in Glostrup Hospital, where they was talking about wayfinding, both for persons with mental and intellectual disability, but also people who are visually impaired or wheelchair like you, like myself. How can we optimize the way a big hospital work, make sure that you as a patient can find your way to the right department and get the assistance along the way which you need. Last example from the health area is also that last year I was involved in a reference group about multi-diseases. In the beginning, the group was meant to just focus that this issue that maybe if you have more diseases, maybe you would end up going to the hospital 3 or 4 times during a week, which is annoying for everyone. But after our involvement, the user involvement in this reference group in a national health department, it changed focus. So it makes sure that the dialogue and communication result in wider and better discussions, not only focused on the booking issues, but also focused on, for example, how do the different hospital departments talk to each other? How do we make sure that the community, local community, their support system, maybe with an assistant, work together with the hospital and all these other issues. They wouldn't have done that if there weren't a user like myself involved. During COVID-19, we have also had the focus on disability. The Danish government had made a partnership on disability, which facilitates, and my organization facilitates the disability area partnership adopted by the Danish parliament parties on April 25th, 2020. The partnership contributes to creating security and counteracting loneliness and numbers of dissatisfaction among vulnerable groups throughout the reopening of society. And it plays an important role in developing new solutions and uncovering any new challenges as the society gradually reopens. And the group will continue working until the reopening of the society is complete. And I've also been part of this, but also in a group which was there to make sure that some of the right people get some money. And one of the projects which I helped facilitate that this project should be supported was a group where they applied for instruments like the ones you see in the picture, instruments which are outside people with cognitive disability, intellectual disabilities. They are meant for those, and also to make it interesting to leave the place where they live, to go outside instead of just staying inside, being able to act together but still have a difference. So again, the user involvement makes sure that you support the right projects and just not just the project which might sound interesting for someone who does not have the direct experience.
Liv, you have 2 minutes left.
Thank you. I'm also just about finished, because the last thing I wanted to say, that this is very good that I'm involved and the users involved, but we also have to do it ourselves. So around 15 years ago, we had the idea of making a house for disabled people's organizations. And we wanted to make it accessible for everyone. I had this user involvement from the start. So what we did was having accessibility education for the competing teams. Prior to the competition, an extensive user involvement process was carried out. An accessibility group consisting of users was established. And throughout the process, we had some tests of international standard for light and lighting of mock-ups of the right color of walls, the right kind of flooring, to make sure it was working for everyone. And some of the results of the house that we have not just one kind of disability toilet, but we have 7 different types because we are a bit different and we have a big house with different toilets. So we might as well have different types. So for example, if you're paralyzed on one side and not the other, you can choose the toilet which suits you. And we have focused not just on accessibility, but as a universal design. How does this benefit all the users of the house? We have focused on acoustics, on lighting, and on wayfinding. So that's why we have the strong colors to make it easier for people with intellectual disability to find the right part of the house. That was all for me. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you for really good presentations until now. And I look forward to the rest of the presentations of today.
Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. I'd like to welcome Dóra Björt Guðjónsdóttir, the chairperson of the Human Rights, Innovation and Democracy Council in Reykjavik, and Heiða Björg Hilmisdóttir, the chairperson of the Welfare Committee and the Child Protection Committee in Reykjavik. They're going to talk about the user involvement in the city of Reykjavik.
Thank you so much. It's really lovely to be with you. Do you hear me okay?
Yes, very well.
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm gonna start. Me and Heiða will be speaking, the both of us, but I'll start with a little bit of the ideology and what we're doing and recent changes in the city of Reykjavik. So as she told you, my name is Dóra. I am the chairperson of the Human Rights, Innovations and Democracy Committee. I think this is a really important subject, and this is something that we focus on quite a lot in Reykjavik, how we can improve citizen involvement when it comes to minorities, but also just the general public. We are now forming a democracy policy, in the first democracy policy of Reykjavik, and because we want to form a roadmap for consultation so that it's not just up to the person involved with policy making, how much they focus on citizen consultation and involvement, but that it's more transparent and more equal, basically. So that is a general framework that we are forming for consultation. But before giving you an insight in the work of Reykjavik when it comes to this and when it comes to involving disabled people in decision making, I want to start talking about the why this is important, which ideology we are basing our work on. This is, of course, important because if the needs of people are known and used for decision making when a service is formed, it gives us less waste, better services, and more efficiency. So this will provide better services that are asked for when it's needed and in the manner it's needed. So research and studies have shown that by doing this, the politics become more involved with minority issues and the plurality of needs. And societies that are focused on citizen engagement and democracy are societies that are often stronger, both from a human rights point of view, but also from an economical point of view. So this is not just right, it's also very good for us in all ways. So I want to tell you about recent changes in Reykjavik when it comes to involvement of people with disabilities. We have now within our system a formal accessibility and consultation committee for the disability issues of Reykjavik. It was founded after we got a new law in 2018 that established the importance of consultation with people with disabilities. And the law says that we need to have 3 elected officials in this committee, but also at least 3 members nominated by the interest organizations. We in Reykjavik decided to go further than this, and we have in total 6 members represented by the interest organizations. We have 3 from the Icelandic Disability Alliance. We have, and whereof 1 has to be with a mental disability. We have 2 from the National Association of Intellectual Disabilities, and 1 from the Consumer Managed Personal Attendant Services Center. And it's because we want to get the full picture, and this is also because we, when we were making the statutes for this committee, we had a big meeting with all the interest organizations and a lot of different disabled persons. And we also visited all the interest organizations, and they focused on having more voices at the table, and we decided to go that way. The committee is supposed to advise all of the departments of Reykjavik when it comes to issues that are relevant to disabled people. This is something we're still forming how it should look, because it's a complicated issue to have one committee involved in all decision making that is relevant, because what is relevant and what is not relevant, and it's still something that we are forming. But the goal is, of course, to both improve the services of disabled people and also increase accessibility of disabled people to all of the services, to information, and to Reykjavik as a landscape. So of course, this is based on the ideology that you should always you should be able to have an independent life as a disabled person. You should be involved with all decision making. And what we have put down in the statutes for this committee is that this committee is supposed to be involved not just at one point in the decision making or the policy making, but at all points, the beginning, in the middle, and the end. And the framework is, of course, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and the focus on the independent life. Yes, so this is something that we are still focusing on, how should look. I feel that there's a huge interest in the system, in the political system, in more consultation. We are taking more steps everywhere when it comes to this, trying new methods, and also trying to have it as formal as possible, so it happens not just when the mood is right, but when so it's more transparent and understandable for the citizen when they can influence decision making. Because now we have the technology for general citizens to be able to have the information needed, so they can be a part of our informed decision making. And I think it's up to us in power to enable this engagement. And it's a great and important responsibility that I hope that we in Reykjavik give the respect it deserves and the energy it needs. And we are taking further steps every day. And now I'm gonna give the word to my colleague, Heiða Björg Hilmisdóttir, who is the chairperson of the Welfare Committee. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I can talk, but I cannot start my video because the host has to do that. But I can start to talk, absolutely. Disabled people's organizations in Iceland have always had a strong voice, and their demands has been the same as throughout Europe. Nothing about us without us, as you heard earlier this morning in many talks here from Iceland. In recent years, new legislation and the CRPD has made it obligatory for government to not only listen, but also recognize the power and authority of disabled people in the decision-making process. And we have taken that very seriously here in Reykjavik. We have this active new council, as Dora told you about, and I can tell you more examples of that. For example, when we made this strategy on services with people with disabilities in 2014, we had an earlier council then. We went in close cooperation with that earlier council, who had representatives from various disabled people's organizations. And I think all of us were like really concentrating on just making the service and the city a better place for everybody. And in recent months, we have been in active involvement with disabled people, both individuals and their families, and also their organizations, to adapt us to new circumstances every day during this COVID-19 crisis. And we, as a city of Reykjavik, have absolutely benefited from this active involvement in replanning support and services to disabled people. It has been very trying for us all, and especially for disabled people. And with this cooperation, we think that we have better achieved finding solutions in dealing with COVID-19, both in replanning and dealing with it as a whole and for every individual. So I think that is a great example of how important it is that not to think that we know the best. It's not an option to close any organizations, but to develop them further as we with the users. So we have this like 70 different residences where people live or stay for a shorter time. We cannot close those down. It's not possible. We cannot stop serving people with disabilities in the city. We cannot close the workplaces where they work. So we have to find solutions, and no one is better in finding those solutions than the people that work there and the organizations, their organizations. We have been very, very thankful for that, and I think it's also a lesson for us to be in closer connection after this COVID-19 crisis. Fortunately, hopefully, will end. We have a special user committee for the transport services, which is involved in development of that special type of service. We see that user-controlled personalized assistance is here to stay. We feel that it's a lot of people with disabilities who want that service, and it's in implementation in Reykjavik, but unfortunately very slow, and we need more backup there from the state to be able to do that sufficiently. We are now making a new strategy for Reykjavik, for the welfare services, and strategy for how we can try to make the people in Reykjavik feel better, be happier, and feel better. And we decided in that role, also because we have been working with handicapped, disabled organizations before, and we decided now that we would take it a larger step and start this strategy making with asking the citizens of Reykjavik. We asked them about stories, how we have been serving them, how we could do better. We also sent letters to all those with disabilities who get service from Reykjavik to ask them to give us their advice. And I think this is an incredibly valuable for us, because it's really, really important to stay in close cooperation with those organizations for disabled people, but we are all unique and we have all these different views. And I think it's really, really important. And I also admire that, because in the strategy group, which is ahead of this new strategy making, we have persons from those organizations, and they completely agree. They don't want to be the token disabled person who is asked to talk on behalf of very, very huge variety of disabilities that we all have in some way. So I think now we are on a good road with this. We want to make the city better. We wanted to make it more responsive and more open for people to get the services they need. And so far we have over 1,000 people who have taken part of this process, not all with disabilities, but it's of great value for us. And I think this is the way forward now to make strategies and outside in, that we start with the users and the citizens, and then we go inside and talk with the disabled organizations and the politicians and the professionals and find the best solutions and go out again and see if it matches. So this is what is happening here in Reykjavik regarding the welfare services. Yeah, Dora, did you want to add something?
No, I think it's. I think we have covered at least like the pillars of what we are doing, and we're also forming, as Heiða said, we're forming new policies to increase the involvement. What I find, of course, like we have many good things coming for us, but we also want to. What I am kind of focused on is that we need to formalize the engagement so that it is transparent and so that it is equal. So it's not just up to people like Heida and me who are very interested in consultation so that it happens, because so many different people are forming policy. We are leading some policies, and there's other people leading policies, and we need to, I really emphasize the importance of having a roadmap. So that's why we are doing that within the democracy policy framework now, and also how we can use our consultation committees in an active way, in a way that functions and works for everyone, because of course this committee does not have endless time, but so we have to, the new thing here is that before we had some committees that were involved in with the services of disabled people, at least within the welfare.
Left, Dora, thank you. 1 minute left.
Yeah, okay, sorry, yeah. But now we have this emphasis by the law that they have to be involved with all different issues within all different departments. So we are broadening the perspective a lot. So
and we, not only because of the law, it's just because we get better strategy and better organizations if we involve them in the whole process. So I absolutely agree. And it's our core now to take this into the strategy and into the planning, so it stays there, even though we go away.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dora and Heida. And now we have our final speaker before lunch, Anders Christopher Brav Eriksen, Senior Advisor of Bufdir, Barne Ungdoms and Family Directorate in Oslo, is going to tell us about the Norwegian government work towards involving representative bodies of people with disabilities in municipalities and counties. And welcome, Anders.
Hello, can you hear me?
Very well.
My lecture is about Norwegian government's work towards involving representative bodies of people with disabilities in municipalities. I also work with Transport Universal Design, a BAFTA project on the Convention of the Rights of People with Disabilities, where we especially focus on Article 19, the right for independent life, and Article 24, education. When I refer to councils in the municipalities in this lecture, I also mean councils for in-county municipalities. First, I will say a little about the current legislation in Norway. From 2019, councils for people with disabilities are legislated in the Local Government Act, together with youth councils and councils for the elderly. So that is new in Norway. And the Ministry of Local Government and Modernization has drawn up new common regularities for these entities. So this new law has been functioning for 1 year. A little historical overview. In the 1990s, the Ministry of Social Affairs issued recommendations that the municipalities should establish councils. By the middle of the 2000s, about half of the municipalities and most of the county municipalities had established councils on a voluntary basis. So it was not 100% successful. I also like to say that a separate law for councils for the elderly was passed as early in 1992. But the Youth Council was not enacted until 2019. The Norwegian government proposed the enactment of council, and a separate law came into force in 2007. The old law for council for people with disabilities stated that municipalities and counties shall ensure that people with disabilities have broad, open access to participation and involvement in matters of particular importance to them. To achieve this goal, municipalities and counties are to establish councils or other representative bodies for persons with disabilities. Persons with disabilities have been for a long time excluded from participation in political and public life, and to counter this widespread exclusion, the Norwegian government brought about this act in 2007. In this old legislation, it was also opened up for joint councils for people with disabilities with the elderly people, but this should be the exception. Current legislation, it says that the council has the right to express its opinion on all issues concerning persons with disabilities. The same right is for councils for the elderly people and youth councils. The municipal council must establish routines to ensure that questions relevant to people with disabilities are submitted to the councils for people with disabilities at such an early stage in the case processing that they can influence the final outcome. Some councils earlier complained that they received cases too late to be seen too late, and that was the background for this new regulation. In the regulation, it says that annually the councils for persons with disabilities shall prepare their own annual report submitted to the municipal council or county council. Annual reports usually contains information about members and cases that council dealt with. Bufdir recommend that the council also report on cases where the council has had an impact on the municipality decision, and which cases that are still unresolved and which the council must follow up. The regulations also state that the municipal council may grant members of the council the right to attend and speak in the meetings of the municipal council and other elected local bodies. The council shall be provided with sufficient secretarial assistance. That stays in the regulation. It is not specified any further. The council also must have a mandate defining purpose of the council, composition of the council, and term of office. It is common for the councils to operate for a period of 4 years in Norway. Bufdir has made guidelines for council work. We did that in September 2019, and 2 groups are targeted: the council and its members, and the municipal administration responsible for serving the council. It contains 5 boxes. The first box, what do we mean by the Council for People with Disabilities? How the council is set up, especially for members of the council, especially for council secretaries and administration, and what does the law and regulations say? We know little about how much the website is used, but we hope it's useful for both the councils and the administration. We stress in the guidelines that the CRPD, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, should be part of the basis for the work of the councils. The councils have an important function in the joint work to fulfill the goals in the government strategy for equality of persons with disabilities for the period 2020, 2030 at the municipal and county level. This strategy focuses on 4 areas: education, employment, health and care, and culture and leisure. In the guidelines, we say that it's important with broad focus in council work. The councils are recommended to get involved in several different areas: kindergarten, school and education, participation in working life, health and care services, planning and building outdoor area, transportation, culture and leisure. The CRPD is about the whole life, and so the council should have a broad focus. It's important. One special area that we focus on in the guideline is the right to attend local school. The right to attend local school is statutory but can be difficult to achieve in practice. Many parents opt out of local school for fear of lack of resources and social isolations for their children. The council should monitor the situation in their own municipality and, if necessary, raise current issues with the municipality. It's important that pupils with special educational needs get together with other pupils to the greatest possible extent. This is a topic the council should pay special attention to, that pupils get a real opportunity to go to local school. Bufdir conducted a survey in 2016, which showed that 98.9% of the municipalities have established councils for persons with disabilities. It should have been 100%, but it is 98.9%. 75% of the councils were separate councils for people with disabilities. 22% were joint councils for persons with disability and the elderly, which was an increase from 14% in a study carried out in 2014. 3% were other ways of organization or organization participation. Other ways of organization participation is no longer a possibility in the new law. Council members, age and gender. 57% of the members are women, 43% are male. We see that very few are young people in the councils. Only 1% is under 25 years old. The vast majority is between 40 and 60 and over 60 years. So it's a challenge to get more young people in the councils. We emphasize this can have an impact on which issues the council addresses. If there are more young people, I think they will more focus on perhaps education for people with students with disabilities. The framework condition of the councils: 84% of the councils have a secretary whose time allocated to the council is less than 10%. 83% have a mandate regulation. 17% have no mandate. 4 out of 5 municipalities state that routines have been established to ensure that important cases are presented well in advance. 1 out of 5 municipalities do not have such routines. As we have seen, routines to submit cases to the council is followed up in the new regulation. A survey conducted by the Norwegian Institute of Urban and Regional Research in 2014 showed that the councils are very involved in matters concerning universal design. The Norwegian Federation of Organizations of Disabled People reports in a survey from 2019 that the councils are largely consulted about universal design of buildings, while questions concerning services, work, and school are to a lesser extent addressed. Bufdir attempts to influence the councils in order to get them involved in a wider spectrum of issues pertaining to the lives of people with disabilities. Universal design is important, but it's also important that they engage in other issues. Bufdir are in the process of initiating a study that will take a closer look at which areas and matters the council engage in. Other topics in the study include resources allotted, case management, working methods, and influence. We hope that the study will, among other things, provide a picture of the proportion between separate councils and joint councils for people with disabilities and the elderly, the proportion of young people in the councils, the council's framework condition, and whether there are differences between the councils in different types of municipalities. Examples of recommendations in the guidelines: establishing regular meetings with the major increases the possibility of impact of the council views. We also say that inviting people from the administration to council meetings is a good idea, and the council should address the question of whether they can be given the right to attend and speak in elected bodies. The municipal council, according to the regulations, can give members of the council such a right. Inviting people from the administration to council meetings provides the opportunity for direct input before the case is completed, and it should be followed up with written input from the council. Bufdir is invited and gives presentations at some conferences arranged by regional councils to educate municipal councils. We provide information on the Local Government Act, regulations, and guidelines. Bufdir guidelines you can find here. You can see it later. Some concluding remarks. Our impression is that there are large differences between the municipalities about how well the cooperation between the council and the and the municipality works, and in which cases the councils are involved in. We think there is a need to strengthen the training offered to the councils, better education. And it's important to get more young people into the councils. Yeah, that was my presentation.
Thank you very much, Anders, and for this interesting lecture. I'd like to introduce Héðinn Jónsson, chairperson of the Icelandic Mental Health Alliance. I'll be talking about the polycotomous approach to mental health and the importance of inclusion in the policy process.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Héðinn Jónsson, and I'm the chairperson of the Icelandic Mental Health Alliance. But I also have different hats. So I'm also a senior policy analyst at the Prime Minister's office. But I used to also be a user of the mental health services. And once I worked as a technical officer for the World Health Organization when we were starting to put the CPR together back in 2004-05. I will speak to you about people with psychosocial disabilities. I choose to use psychosocial because that's what I got used to while working with WHO and in those years. But first, it's been interesting listening to all of you this morning, speaking on from different plateaus of the field, from an expert point of view to a politician and the user organizations and disability organizations. The Mental Health Alliance is a national alliance here in Iceland covering rights and interests and issues of people with mental health problems, and also those who on those accounts have become or experienced a psychosocial disability. The disability of psychosocial disability is an interesting disability because it's reversible up to a point. I've worked with and known quite a few people who have had a mental health problem which led to a psychosocial disability, but then they worked their way back. So it's reversible. But first of all, let's start. In the year 1490 to 1500, this Dutch painter of Hegmonius Bos painted this picture, Ship of Fools. It has no bearing on us. It's just, I used to use it while traveling through Eastern Europe, working for WHO, explaining and talking about segregation and alienation of those through the centuries who have suffered from some sort of, mental health problems or psychosocial disabilities. This picture portrays humankind in a way, traveling on a boat together down the river of life and arguing about different kind of things. But exactly like that in the first place with people with mental health problems in the 16th and 17th and 18th century were put on boats on the rivers of Central Europe, segregated from the rest of the community. And then came the bedlams and the rest you know. So I always found this to be an interesting picture. I also took some pictures from my collection, some of those who I've taken myself and others from colleagues from WHO, just portraying the segregation and the violence and the coercion that has been going on through centuries and decades when it comes to the group that we're talking about, those with psychosocial disabilities. All sorts of segregation and alienation and discrimination, and of course stigmatization. Cage beds, all sorts of human rights violations, etc., etc. So the story of medicine and psychiatry is quite an interesting one, and it's a story of good intentions. We have had so good intentions throughout the centuries. Even our best intentions have gotten the Nobel Prize. Agnes Monitz Portuguese neuroscientist and psychiatrist got the Nobel Prize in 1949 for frontal lobotomy. So you see, it's always good to look at the present or history past with the spectacles of the present. This here is Rosemary Kennedy. She was the sister of John F. Kennedy, daughter of Joseph Kennedy, and she was born in 1940. No, 1918, sorry. This is a picture of her from 1940. She was a beautiful young woman, but she suffered from a slight deprivation of oxygen during birth. So she was a little, shall I put it, slow. And in 1941, when she was going to school, her father decided that he was afraid, was a bit afraid of what might happen to her when she left home and went to school, and the issue of men, etc., etc. And she had some issues with her temper, etc. So she underwent frontal lobotomy by Walter Friedman, who was then the key figure in frontal lobotomy in the US, practiced all the way up to 1960. And after that, she spent the rest of her days in a caring home in Wisconsin. The reason why I'm showing you this is not to criticize psychiatry too much. They were only doing what they thought they were best in those days. But I'm just putting things into perspective, because next I want to talk a bit about psychosocial disability and their part, at least here in Iceland, in those people who have had disabilities, and the inclusion of us, those who have suffered from mental health problems and experience psychosocial disabilities. The tree has many branches, someone said sometime, but in 1883, when Emil Kraepelin put together the first compendium of psychiatry for the use of students and physicians, there were only 6 diagnostic criteria. And some people now are worried, a bit worried, because this is at the consequential end of disability, the consequential end. DSM-5, the 2013 version, has 600 diagnoses when it comes to mental health problems. So 600 more, 100 times more than in 1883. And the issue of medicalization is really something that we, at least in the Icelandic Alliance, and even Special Rapporteur of the UN, Danius Puras, my friend from Lithuania, psychiatrist from Lithuania, now a Special Rapporteur for Human Rights with the UN, has voiced his concerns about, because we are also seeing, at least here, effects of this. Because now we have around 2%, 2.7% of the population experiencing some sort of psychosocial disabilities. And the numbers we're seeing last 20 years of persons on disability benefits in Iceland have risen from 2000 to 2018 up by 122% with psychosocial disability, and total 98% with disability. And this is a concern. So we are getting more and more people diagnosed, yes, and treated, but nevertheless, they are ending on disability benefits, and we are seeing a huge increase. And this is something that is of concern. The key issues of users, or those on psychosocial disability here, are acceptance, human rights, stigma, discrimination, treatment and services, but above all, what we're talking about here today, inclusion and involvement into housing, employment, education, policy making, etc. To be included, nothing about us, without us, etc. And the whole shebang. I took place and practiced with Judy Chamberlain and David Oakes and those people in the early 2000s in WHO Geneva, when we were all coming together, trying to make an impact on the WHO, trying to make them see our way, and etc., etc. So I know the rhetoric, I know the history of the social movement in the US, and the difference between the European groups and the US-led civil movement. But the ideology of involvement implies there is a separation. And the discourse of segregation is interesting. And this is something we have to talk about and discuss the definition, what it is to be disabled, and the dichotomy of ability and disability, the dichotomy of this is and ease, and the polychotomy of the whole thing together. This needs discussion, because we cannot just move on and having capitalistic propaganda and even the drug industry run the whole thing. Because for me, the medicalization has become out of control, and the development of DSM and ICD are examples of that. And that is only at the consequential end. But of course, it's important to involve, but it implies that there is a separation. The area of empowerment has been going on for decades now. There have been radical active movements all around Europe and all around America and Australia, New Zealand, all over. And the CPR, the convention is an example of that. But there is this issue of the subjective and the reversible definition of the psychosocial disability. That makes him a little bit different from the rest. But we need numbers, we need indicators. How has the involvement changed? Has it been objectified? Where are the indicators? How can we measure it? How many people are involved, etc.? To what extent is the involvement tokenistic, or is it? At first, I think it was. I remember being hired at the WHO. I thought it was well, the government gave a grant, and I felt my superiors in the organization, they were hiring a user, so they could tick the box that a user was working for the WHO. So up to a point, I think it is tokenistic, but that has to change. But we have words and we have deeds. It's important to put our words into actions, and we should speak more about our actions than our deed, and should always remember also that, like Truman said once, it's amazing what you can achieve with your life, as long as you don't matter who gets the credit. Sometimes that is important also. And the soft power discourse of the states and the IGOs, UN included, they recognize, they take notice, and the discourse is just too subjective, and that needs to be addressed. But on top of all, we need more numbers about involvement. We need indicators to tell us how we stand in those issues, because these are good intentions, both the SDGs and the convention. And the convention has even pushed forward here in Iceland the discussion about, for example, in the 14th article, that those people with disabilities have now, in my terms, more rights when it comes to legal capacity and the coercion, when you are coercively treated on the basis of the legislation of mental legal capacity. So in a way, the convention has pushed forward rights of everyone, and that is also thought, because we come back to the issue of the segregation, and because by talking about involvement, we imply that there is a segregation. So that is kind of maybe a final thought or final idea that I want to leave behind, is that as we watch the tree, we noticed also that the tree has a bulk. So we as human beings have more in common that divides us. So we need to take the discussion on the dichotomy of ability, disability, dis-ease, ease, etc., in the spirit of Ivan Illis and R.D. Lang and Thomas Satz and those who have come before us, discussing this ideology behind the issue of inclusion. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you very much, Ian. And spot on time as well. I would like to remind everyone that you can ask questions in the chat if you're interested. So just and please don't hesitate to do so. I will then read the questions to the speakers. Next, we're going to be provided with a disability review of the implementation of the United Nations Convention. So I'd like to welcome the representatives from the focus groups.
Góðan daginn, komið sæl, ég heiti María Hreiðarsdóttir, ég hef verið sendiherra samnings Sameinuðu þjóðanna réttindi fatlaðs fólks frá árinu 2011. Hlutverk okkar sendiherra hefur verið að kynna samninginn fyrir fötluðum fólki og nú á seinni árum einnig fyrir almenningi.
Good afternoon. My name is María Hreiðarsdóttir. I have been an ambassador to the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities since 2011. Our role as ambassadors is to introduce the convention to persons with disabilities and, in recent years, to the public.
Í fyrra gerðum við ásamt átaki félagi fólks með þroskahömlun rannsókn framkvæmd samningsins og ég ætla að kynna fyrir ykkur hvernig við unnum hana.
Last year, together with AUTAC, Association of People with Intellectual Disabilities, we did a study on the implementation of the convention in Iceland, and now I will present the methodology and execution of the study.
Landssamtökin Þroskahjálp var falið af félagsmálaráðuneyti að gera rannsókn, fjölmennt símenntunarstöð og þekkingarmiðstöð sáu framkvæmd verkefnisins.
Þroskahjálp, National Association for Intellectual Disabilities, was commissioned by the Ministry of Social Affairs to carry out the study. Fjölmennt, Lifelong Learning and Knowledge Center for People with Intellectual Disabilities, was responsible for the implementation of the project.
Það var ákveðið átak félag fólks með þroskahömlun og sendiherrarnir myndu vinna verkefni saman.
It was decided that AUTAC, Association of People with Intellectual Disabilities, and the ambassadors would work on the study together.
Skýrslan var unnin af fólki með þroskahömlun og endurspeglar raddir þeirra. Ráðinn var verkefnastjóri sem hélt utan verkefnið.
The study was prepared and conducted by people with intellectual disabilities and reflects their voices. A project manager was hired to manage the project.
Stofnaðir voru 6 vinnuhópar og voru 3 til 4 einstaklingar í hverjum hóp. Hver hópur hittist 7 til 9 sinnum. Þátttakendur í vinnuhópnum fengu greitt fyrir vinnu sína.
6 working groups were established with 3 to 4 individuals in each group. Each group met 7 to 9 times. Participants in the working groups were paid for their work.
Of mikið var að taka fyrir allar greinar samningsins og því var ákveðið að velja mikilvægustu greinar að mati þeirra sem tóku þátt í verkefninu. Alls var unnið með 14 greinar.
It was thought too extensive to cover all the articles of the CRPD and therefore decided to choose the most important ones according to the opinion of those who participated in the project. A total of 14 articles were examined.
Hver vinnuhópur fjallaði 2 til 4 greinar samningsins í byrjun. Var farið í hugmyndarvinnu hvernig best væri að fá upplýsingar. Allir vinnuhópar ákveða að kalla saman rýnihópa til upplýsingaöflunar og til að dýpka þekkinguna.
Each working group discussed 2 to 4 articles. In the beginning, there was a brainstorm session to decide how to proceed and how to gather information. All working groups decided to convene focus groups to gather information and deepen the knowledge.
Útbúinn var bæklingur sem útskýrði verkefnið og nauðsynlegt var að hafa þegar aflað var viðmælenda fyrir rýnihópa. 2 vinnuhópar ákveða að fara í vettvangsferðir og 2 vinnuhópar fengu gesti á fund.
A booklet was prepared to explain the project, which was necessary to recruit participants in the focus groups. 2 working groups decided to go on field trips and 2 working groups received guests at meetings.
Hver rýnihópur hittist einu sinni, samtölin voru tekin upp, afrituð af starfsmanni verkefnis, eins vinnuhópanir unnu úr viðtölunum, bættu við sínum áherslum og reynslu.
Each focus group met once. The conversations were recorded and transcribed by the project manager. The working groups organized findings from the interviews and added their own points and experiences.
2 vinnuhópar fóru í vettvangsferðir og könnuðu aðgengi að ýmsum byggingum svo sem Alþingi, bókasafni, listasafni, menntaskóla, leikhúsi, kirkju, ráðhúsi í Reykjavík og kaffihúsi.
2 working groups went on field trips and explored access to various buildings, such as the House of Parliament, the City Library, the Reykjavík Art Museum, a high school, a theater, Reykjavík City Hall, and a cafe.
Einn vinnuhópur fékk til sín réttindagæslu fatlaðra til þess að fá upplýsingar lagalega stöðu fatlaðs fólks og heyra starf réttindagæslu.
1 working group met with representatives of the Disability Rights Monitoring Unit to obtain information on the legal status of people with disabilities and to get acquainted with the work of the Rights Monitoring Unit.
Í lokin var skrifuð skýrsla með niðurstöðum rannsóknarinnar. Alls komu milli 30 og 40 manns að þessari vinnu.
At the end, a report was written with the results of the study. In total, between 30 and 40 people participated in the project.
Það sem helst brennur á fötluðu fólki að mati þeirra sem tóku þátt í verkefninu búseta, atvinnu og menntamál.
The biggest concerns for people with disabilities, in the opinion of those who took part in the project, are housing, employment, and education.
Að eiga sjálfstætt líf mikilvægt fyrir alla. Fatlað fólk þarf mismikla aðstoð og hún verður að vera á forsendum hvers og eins. Sjálfræði fatlaðs fólks ekki alltaf virt og oft teknar ákvarðanir fyrir það.
Leading an independent life is important for everyone. People with disabilities need different levels of assistance, and it must be on individual terms. The autonomy of people with disabilities is not always respected, and decisions are often made for them.
Auk þarf framboð á húsnæði og fólk á að hafa val með hverjum það býr.
The supply of housing needs to be increased, and people should have a choice about with whom they live.
Fatlað fólk verður að hafa val atvinnu. Opna þarf vinnumarkaðinn, hafa fólk með í ráðum atvinnuþátttöku og almennt veita fleiri fjölbreyttari tækifæri til atvinnu.
People with disabilities should have a choice of employment. We need to open up the labor market, involve people with disability in employment, participation, and in general create more diverse employment opportunities for people with disabilities.
Einnig verður að gera átak í því að hvetja atvinnurekendur til þess að ráða fatlað fólk í vinnu, vera með námskeið og fræðslu og koma af stað vitundarvakningu þannig að vinnumarkaðurinn átti sig á að fatlað fólk getur lagt mikilvæga hluti til samfélagsins.
Efforts must also be made to encourage employers to employ people with disabilities, provide courses and education, and encourage initiatives on awareness raising so that the labor market realizes that people with disabilities can contribute to society in a meaningful way.
Fötluð ungmenni þurfa að hafa meira val nám í framhaldsskóla. Þau sitja ekki við sama borð og aðrir hvað varðar menntun eftir framhaldsskóla lýkur.
Young people with disabilities need to have more choices in secondary education, and they do not sit at the same table as others in terms of education after graduation from secondary school.
Hvetja þarf Háskóla Ísland til þess að opna fleiri námsleiðir fyrir fólk með þroskahömlun og hvetja aðra háskóla til að gera slíkt hið sama.
The University of Iceland needs to be encouraged to open up more study programs for people with intellectual disabilities, and other universities encouraged to do the same.
Einnig þarf að bjóða upp á fjölbreyttari námskeið, námsbrautir við aðrar menntastofnanir sem bjóða nám fyrir fullorðið fólk.
There is also a need to offer a more variety of courses and study programs at other lifelong learning institutions for adults.
Það þarf að auka virðingu fyrir fötluðu fólki í samfélaginu, fræða almenning líf þess.
We need to increase respect for people with disabilities in the community and educate the public about their lives.
Samningur Sameinuðu þjóðanna réttindi fatlaðs fólks mikilvægur og við eigum að vera dugleg að nota hann.
The United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is important, and we must be diligent in using it.
Hann vopnið okkar.
It is our weapon.
Í samningnum stendur þegar aðildarríkin undirbúa löggjöf sína og stefnu samningi þessum til framkvæmda og vinna að því að taka ákvarðanir málefni sem varða fatlað fólk. Skulu þau hafa samráð við fatlað fólk og tryggja virka þátttöku þess. Takk fyrir.
The convention states in the development and implementation of legislation and policies to implement the present convention and in other decision-making processes concerning issues relating to persons with disabilities, state parties shall closely consult with and actively involve persons with disability.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this and this fantastic work. Next, I'd like to welcome Petra Rantamäki, Partnership Director of the Service Foundation for People with an Intellectual Disability, Finland. Her presentation is called Not for Sale, Citizens' Initiative Promoting Human Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Welcome, Petra.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Petra Rantamäki, and I'm giving you the Finnish example of citizens' initiative that is actually at the moment promoting human rights of persons with disabilities in Finland. It all started with competitive tendering processes in the services of persons with disabilities. Finland has ratified the UNCRPD already in 2016, and after the ratification, it is part of our legislation. At the same time, the Finnish Procurement Act, which was reformed to be in line with EU directives, and the law came into effect in 2017. Quite soon after that, NGOs received messages and stories from persons with disabilities that there was going on these competitive tendering processes of the services for persons with disabilities. So this Not for Sale campaign initiated that the necessary help and support of persons with disabilities, such as housing services, should be excluded from the Act of Public Procurement. If you are not aware of the process that is going on in Finland, in practice, in everyday life, it means that public procurement measures can be carried out every couple of years in the same services. So in worst case scenarios, it caused that persons' services like housing services are for sale like in every 3 years or so, and it is often competitive tendering, so it means also that the price of the service goes down, and that has of course effects on the quality. So the Not for Sale campaign argues that this act of public procurement, when it is used in disability services, that it's against the UNCRPD, especially because, of course, UNCRPD emphasized the equality and inclusion of people with disabilities, and it also states that persons with disabilities have equal rights to choose where they live and with whom they live. And it is also notable that when these public procurement measures are taking place, the contract is made between the municipality and between the service provider. So actually the service user doesn't have sort of a legal contract in that relation. Well, the authorities have argued that the EU directive is binding and that the Act of Public Contracts cannot be revised. And also the common argument throughout this, our campaign has been that the problem is not actually the act, but the way municipalities are implementing it. Because in Finland, we have other ways of organizing services. Municipalities are responsible of organizing services, but they have different ways of doing it, such as service vouchers. But for the past few years, this competitive tendering has been has given more chances. If this citizens initiative is not familiar to you, in Finland, it was taken into use in 2012, and it's a quite new way of working. And this was the first kind of citizens initiative that promoted the rights of persons with disabilities. And it offers citizens an possibility to have their initiative considered by the parliament. Threshold is 50,000 Finnish citizens, and this Not for Sale campaign was able to receive it. So in the spring 2018, we actually gained over 72,000 signatures. So it was delivered to the parliament. There were few reasons for why this campaign was a success. It was because it was really based on the stories, everyday life experiences of persons with disabilities and their families. We gained good media coverage, and we also met a lot of politicians throughout the way. So after this campaign, more politicians and more persons with disabilities were more aware of UNCRPD and actually the problems that Public Procurement Act was causing in the lives of persons with disabilities. So at the end of the discussion on the initiative in the parliament required government to appoint an expert group, and the NGOs that started this campaign are part of this expert group. And the task of this expert group is to examine the need for revisions in social and healthcare and guidance also in the social and health service sector. The work still continues. The final report will be very important for this campaign. The final report should be ready by the end of this year. So it still continues. We are not finished with the campaigning yet. People with disabilities, their family members, and active NGOs have been very active throughout this campaign, and we are still continuing the work. I think that all in all, it has strengthened people's voices, and the UNCRPD is people are more aware of that, but we still haven't had any changes in the legislation. So, and still the competitive tendering processes are going on in municipalities. So in many ways, it is still a big problem in Finland, and there are still many people with disabilities who are dealing with this problem in their everyday life. At the moment, we are going on with this reform of social and healthcare services in Finland, and there are some pilots for personal budgets or self-directed support. And also there is a reform of Disability Services Act going on. So of course, we hope that the needed legislation changes would be in place in the next few years. But we are, of course, at the moment living very crucial times for this campaign, and with this COVID-19 situation, it doesn't help, because many people are not able to participate as much as they want. So we are continuing our work, and I'm happy to tell you more about this if you have any questions, or you can contact me also later. There is my contact email.
Thank you very much, Petra. It's very interesting. I would like to ask if anyone has any questions, to do so in the Q&A. But maybe I have one question. This campaign seems to be a great example, and I would like maybe to hear your thoughts on what do you think is maybe the most inspiring? How have you managed to inspire this cooperation? What do you think is the key? What can we look at there as a primary example for other countries?
Well, our CEO often says that it's not a 100-meter run, it's like a marathon. So I think that one key to success is to be very persistent. so that you need to contact politicians, policymakers over and over and over again. And you need to contact them together with persons with disabilities, and you need also to include the family members. I think that one key to success is that it is based on real life experience, and we have been lucky to have this people who have shared their stories and everyday life experiences, because without them it would have not been this effective. Of course, there has been a lot of very wise policymakers in the way, so they have helped us. And one key thing is also that these 35 NGOs in the field of disability have worked together, and none of us would have done it alone. So I think that these like three key things is that it's a marathon. You need to make it together with persons with disabilities and their family members, and together with the NGOs. Yeah, so I think that that's the keys to success, hopefully, because we are not there yet.
Oh, thank you so much. One last question, maybe. Are you worried about a setback now because of COVID? Do you have any thoughts on how we can prevent setbacks, because of COVID, because of affection of many services for disabled people, isolation, others? Have you discussed this?
Yes, there is a lot of isolation, and also people are, when they are isolated, they cannot work together as much as usual. And the one thing is, as always, lack of money. And there are, because in Finland this reform of social and healthcare services is going on, and this COVID-19 is not helping the municipalities in their responsibilities of organizing services. So I think that this is really the time when you measure the UNCRPD and how committed our government is to implement it in practice. This reform of social and healthcare services has been going on in Finland for, I don't know, a decade already. And now we really have to make it, because in Finland we have over 300 municipalities, big and small, in Lapland and in Helsinki city area, and they all have the same responsibilities of organizing services. So we really need to make these bigger regions that are responsible of organizing services, so there would be enough expertise and enough funding for these services for persons with disabilities. And also we need this kind of new innovations and new ways of organizing support and services, because when you make it together with persons themselves and it fits sort of the support and services, when it fits, it's not necessarily any more expensive. It can be have even more impact and save some costs if it's done together with people themselves.
Thank you. What a great ending. And also it's very fitting that we are, good to see that we are that many here. So we are continuing our discussions, even though COVID has set us huge boundaries in communication. So thank you very much, Petra.
Thank you.
Now we come to a bit of a change in our program. Some of you will not be participating in the second half of the seminar. I would like to thank you for joining here today and for participating in this seminar, this webinar. That's been going great. We have had our technical services have ensured that everything's been going as we planned. So I would like to say goodbye and thank you to the participants that are leaving us